Today is April the 17th, 2017. My name is Tanya Finchum, and I'm with Oklahoma State University. And today I am in Bixby, on the outskirts of Bixby, to interview Jane Breckinridge. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, yep.
And this is going to be part of our Monarch series, which is under our Spotlighting series. So thank you for having me today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Let's begin with learning a little bit about you.
Okay.
When and where were you born?
I was born September 19th, 1964 in St. Francis Hospital in Tulsa. On my birth certificate, it says that it was actually outside the city limits at the time of my birth, interestingly enough. So that kind of gives you a little perspective on that. Yeah.
And what did your parents do?
Okay. Well, my father did a lot of stuff. He was a legislator in the state senate for a number of years, and then went off to pursue other business ventures of different kinds. But my mother was a nurse. She actually taught nursing for over 20 years at TCC, Tulsa Community College, and so that's what she did. And I grew up. I grew up in Tulsa, and then went away at just 17, almost 18, up to St. Paul, Minnesota, to attend college up there, McAllister College, and ended up staying for 22 years, and then got homesick before my 40th birthday, and ended up moving back home.
Yeah.
And it was kind of an interesting thing because at the time I was living actually in a lovely old neighborhood in St. Paul, very, very urban, right in the center of town. And I worked in downtown Minneapolis in a very tall, shiny office tower, and I worked for a publishing company. And I said that I was leaving to move to Leonard, Oklahoma, to raise butterflies, and it was true. And people thought I'd lost my mind, but this has been the best chapter of my life by far. It's been wonderful, and I just kind of got called home. The land where we are right now. This was my great-grandmother's original allotment. When deeded to her when she was 16 years old, we still have the original paperwork on it. And her father, S.W. Brown, was actually the chief of the Euchees. And they were, at the time that the U.S. government took over everything, the nations, they were enrolled federally from a federal perspective with the Muscogee Creek Nation. And so we're Creek citizens, but we're also Euchee. But he made sure, he felt so strongly that people needed to get on those rolls, on the Dawes rolls. And it was very controversial, particularly in the Creek Nation. There was actually like a small civil war over it, and people were killed, and it was quite dangerous. Having already had the land taken away from us once, actually twice, because we got relocated down in Eufaula for a while, and lost the homelands down in Alabama and Georgia. People didn't take very kindly to having the land taken again after the Dawes Act. But he believed that the best way to preserve our language and our culture was to go ahead and at least take this, this meager portion to try and get these parcels of land and trying to preserve it there. And history proved him right, obviously, because we're still here. But when he went out to do that, my great-grandmother, who was just a teenage girl at the time, and he was trying to get all of his Euchee people on the rolls, they would go out in the evenings, and literally she would drive the buggy, and he would sit in the other seat with a shotgun across his lap. And all of a sudden you understand where that expression came from, riding shotgun, because it was so dangerous. And they would go out at night, and they would get people signed up to get on the rolls and get everybody on there. So then that is how we came to have this allotment. And it's been something that's been really a spiritual center for our family for all this time. During the oil years, the big boom after the Glen Pool was found, and in the 20s, they found oil here, and that was good, and they actually moved to town for a while. When the crash came, that did not work out so well, and they moved back down here. And my grandmother was a little girl when that happened. My grandmother's actually born on the hill just over there. Actually, here, I'd say we're very connected here. She was actually born there in a log cabin, and before the oil boom hit, she was born in 1915, and so then they lived to 6th and Xanthus for a number of years up there. They were living there during the race riot, actually, and my grandmother has told me about what that was like and how scary it was when that was going on. but then they moved back down here after the crash. She actually got sent away up to Haskell to Indian school, and which she did not like, and ran away twice. That was bad there. And but then moved back here, and when my mother was a little girl, she used to come down here and stay with her grandmother, my great grandmother, in the old original house, which is just over. Actually, now it just was torn down in the last couple of years, but and it was an old wood house, and this was during the 40s. And my mother would go down there in the summer and stay with her grandmother, and no electricity, no running water, and so it was a different time. And they would literally take the gray mare and the sledge and go over to the well and get water over there. And so anyway, a very, very different time.
And an outhouse.
And an outhouse. Oh yeah, you bet there was an outhouse. So
but education must have been important to them, since your mother went into.
Oh yes, very much so. And my grandmother was the one who really always pushed her on that, is to get an education and the importance of getting an education. And she pushed that so much, was such a believer in it. And actually, my grandmother went on to work at newspaper, the Tulsa World, in the classified section, and actually rose up to kind of being. She would have been the department head, but that was back during the 60s when they didn't let women be department heads. But she ran the department and did all the budgets, all of everything. And so she rose from, being born in a log cabin to running a good-sized department in, fairly good-sized newspaper. And so...
What was her name? Do you know?
Maxine. Her name is Maxine. Maxine Elliott Maxie, and then Akers. She married a man named Max Akers. So... anyway, it's just always it's a journey for everybody. But so when my great grandmother was a very elderly woman, she actually still lived alone for many years out there in that house, and always was there. And after she became widowed, and money was very tight, she always held on to this place no matter what. And they held on during the Depression. They held on later when she was widowed. I mean, they held on at all odds, and then since then, and then when then the lot was split between my grandmother and her sister, and so we have this half, and they have that. My cousins have the other half, but we've kept it and held on to it. So
how big was the original?
It was 160 acres, and then my great grandmother also had her nephews, because she had raised her nephews after their mother died, so she had theirs too. So once you cross over the Snake Creek Bridge, that's starting on all the original allotment lands here. But
well, did you know your great grandmother?
Yes, I did. I did know her. Actually, I'm fortunate enough. I actually knew 3 of my great grandmothers, interestingly enough. But so I guess where I was going with that is, so my great grandmother, when she was continued as an older woman, she was living out here, and when my grandmother was in her 50s. She actually built her house. She had lived with her husband's mother's family in that house, in their historic house. And then, but then after her mother-in-law passed away, she built her own house. She acted as a general contractor back in the 60s, and built her own house out here, and lived out here for a long time until her health didn't allow her to be. And my mother, when she got older, also moved out here. So I don't know, I hit 39 and I just wanted to be here or something, homing. Anyway, so it's kind of crazy,
But do you have siblings, or are you?
I have a brother who lives here, and then I have another brother who passed away. But yeah, my brother's down here too, and he actually, I'm a butterfly farmer, and his business is authenticating artifacts. So anyway, we both do very strange things, but we both do them here, So it's, like I say, it's important. And my other cousin lives on the other side of the allotment too, and so he moved back here just a few years ago too. And anyway, it always calls us home. So as I tell people, I'm 5th generation of my family to farm here, first raise butterflies, and anyway, so it's.
When did you get the butterfly bug to live in Minneapolis?
Well, strange enough, in one form or another, I've actually been in the butterfly business for over 20 years, and in between being also in the publishing business. But busy. I work 7 days a week. But anyway, so when my husband, who is a native Minnesotan, and his family had a Christmas tree farm in western Wisconsin that they had since he was a very, very little boy. And the herbicide that they used killed everything except for Christmas trees and milkweed. And so it was, 80 acres of Scotch pine filled with just rows of milkweed, up to here. And so he had always been just crazy for butterflies since he was just a little boy. So he used to take them in and raise them. And then when we got married, we used to do that. And, we were out there in the summertime in rural Wisconsin. Anyway, so that's a big entertainment, raising out monarchs. And so it was just something we did for fun. And one time a friend was over and saw our big, terrarium full of monarch caterpillars doing the thing. And she said, you can sell those things. And I'm, what? Anyway, and that would have been 94 or 95. It was quite a while ago. Oh, okay. And so then just started getting into it. And so that was my husband's full-time job for many years. So he started out with raising them and selling them to zoos and exhibits and clients. Oprah bought a bunch one time, anyway, for her book club. Anyway, but so he was raising them, and then in 95 actually, because we were at the Minnesota State Fair with, because our daughter was a baby then, just a little baby. And I mentioned him, I said, you could have like a tent here and you could have full butterflies. Wouldn't that be cool? Because Minnesota State Fair, it's huge. It's one of the top 5 in the country. They're like, 2 million visitors in 12 days. It's a big one. And so anyway, so he's like, oh, you're crazy. But anyway, we got the application and he sent it in. And then just like within the next year, right before the fair, they said, okay, great, you're in. But we're not going to let you charge any money. You can sell merchandise. So, okay, put up this exhibit and do all that. And it was nuts. And it was totally crazy. And so I did it with a partner. And then the partner's like, I'm never doing that again. So we bought him out. And we just kind of, doubled down and saw that there was really going to be the potential. So out of that grew and grew and grew. And then about 10 years ago, they gave us a chance to actually buy a building at the fair because we were doing so well. And so we bought that and remodeled it into a butterfly house, that's only open 12 days a year, but it's a big, nice butterfly house in a permanent building, and then with a gift store next door. And so that exhibit last year, we had a record year. We did almost 68,000 paying customers through that thing in 12 days. So that is really very nuts. Huge. It is huge. So we do that, and then we also do. We do Tulsa State Fair and we do the Oklahoma State Fair. We used to do a lot of them for clients just all over everywhere. We used to do a lot of work in Canada. We'd spend most of the summer up in Canada, lots of time in Edmonton. We had a huge exhibit up there, Saskatoon, Regina, Winnipeg. Anyway, so we were just working the Canadian circuit. It was fun. And then as far south as Houston Rodeo. Used to do the Iowa State Fair. We do garden shows all over everywhere all the time where a client will pay us to go in and all that kind of stuff. So kind of transitioned from farming and then to more exhibiting and doing that kind of stuff. And then as we were spending more time on the road, obviously you just can't be raising, so many butterflies when you're, spending all summer in Canada. And then we moved back here, and I actually kept my job up there at Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine and became a telecommuter from Leonard and a butterfly farmer. And so I flew up there once a month, and I'd go spend 3 days a month up there and kept my job. And then we'd be up there mostly in the summers because we still had the farm in Wisconsin, and so we'd kind of be back and forth a lot. And then as we just spent so much time on the road, I really cut back on my magazine duties and switched from all the magazine, cut down from 12 magazines to just working on one. And then we started just, focusing more. I began to spend more and more of my time on butterflies and less on publishing, although I still do both. And then along the way, we kind of thought, well, because there was a program that we worked with down in Costa Rica a lot over the years where they were working with indigenous people and training them to raise butterflies in their own land as an alternative to logging off the rainforest, and it's perfectly sustainable, eco-friendly, and all that kind of stuff. And it's hugely successful. It's been going on for about 25 years now. And anyway, very cool. But as we were buying literally hundreds of thousands of butterflies, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of butterflies, not hundred thousands of dollars. Anyway, so we bought a lot of butterflies, and we were writing very, very, very large checks to these people. And over the years, and about 4 or 5 years ago, my husband said, we have a lot of indigenous people here in Oklahoma. Maybe we've got to think about doing something here. So it was born. So it was his idea, and he was like, there just ought to be a way that we can do this. We've got the original allotment. We can work with the tribes, just try and set something like that up, and going. So anyway, got in touch with the tribe, and there was a lot of leadership changes going over at Muscogee Creek Nation, and but eventually, out of that and that idea, the Natives Raising Natives project was born, which actually is still contained. That was like 2012, 2013. Anyway, we've been on it a while now. So we are partnering with Muscogee Creek Nation, and we are training people to raise butterflies, and as a form of economic independence, all sorts of stuff. So we're doing that, but the project as a whole has 3 goals. The first is to provide economic development and jobs in an eco-friendly way. The second is to provide a hands-on science learning tool for Native youth. Native people are really underrepresented in the STEM fields, science fields at the university level and beyond. And so we knew from our own experience, nothing engages kids like butterflies, maybe dinosaurs more. But anyway, but kids just love butterflies. So we knew this because we'd been working with the tribes a lot, is those kids, and it's not just the obvious lessons about biology and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a great, everything from nutrition to botany, horticulture, ecology, geography. I mean, it's just a really great hands-on teaching tool. So that was the second thing, is provide education. And then the third goal being to try to promote conservation of Oklahoma's native species of butterflies and the very fragile ecosystems that support them, because those things are very intertwined. In about 2014, as the numbers for the monarch started really crashing, really plummeting, our species of focus on the conservation part of the program really began to just narrowly focus on the monarchs, because they were in so much trouble, population down over 90%. And it particularly concerned us because the Monarch Recovery Plan map that had been released by Monarch Watch and NRCS and all the big agencies that were spending a lot of time on this, all had the thing, and the big bullseye for was right in the middle of Oklahoma, because the first generation of monarchs coming out of Mexico needs to reproduce in Oklahoma and Texas, and then in the fall they're coming through like the funnel, and coming through Oklahoma, on their way to Mexico. So we were really in the heart of of the critical recovery zone, and at that time there were no widespread habitat restoration efforts going on anywhere in Oklahoma. There were some really good individual people that were trying to do stuff and raise awareness, but we were really behind what other states were doing, frankly. It just wasn't happening. So I knew from working with tribal leaders on the Natives Raising Natives projects that the commitment was there to want to do something from the tribes. And every time I would talk to them and tell them what was happening with the monarch, I never ever once heard, why do we need to save that butterfly? I just always heard, well, how do we do it? And which was very different than working with other white communities, frankly, because on all sorts of different things from both public and private organizations, it's like, whatever, this, that. But with Native community, there's a cultural commitment there too. And but I also knew that to do this is a pretty large undertaking, that we were going to need more technical help. So I'd heard Dr. Chip Taylor from KU/Monarch Watch speak at a butterfly breeders conference back in like 2013, I think. And so I sent him an email and said, we would really like to do like a monarch migration trail on tribal lands through Oklahoma. Would you be interested or helping us, or could you help us? And he said, yeah, that's a cool idea and very appropriate. And yeah, I can help you to an extent, but you're going to be limited by the capacity issue, because right now you don't have sources of milkweed seeds here in Oklahoma that are locally sourced. You don't have nurseries that are growing out locally sourced milkweed plugs, the little seedlings. You don't have the native wildflower seeds that are locally sourced. They're not commercially available in Oklahoma. You don't have any nurseries growing them out in a widespread scale, and you don't know anybody, you haven't been in Oklahoma that's done any work like this before. Okay, well, that was a good point. So it was first of many conversations about the capacity issue. But he also, we exchanged a lot more about this, and so we thought, well, what if the tribes could do this? What if we could address the capacity issue using the tribal structures? They have environmental departments. They've got the money. They've got the commitment, and they have the land. So we set out to do this, and started with a very small grant from the Monarch joint venture, which is a large conglomeration of a lot of different organizations working on monarchs. And then from that, that was actually working specifically just with Native youth, trying to get them engaged with learning these horticultural skills to do monarch habitat restoration. And then what year was it? 2015, I think. The National Fish and Wildlife Foundation announced the first ever Monarch Butterfly Conservation Grant Fund, and it was like an open grant competition, and it was nuts. They had over, like $20 million worth of funding request for like $2 or $3 million worth of funds. It was anyway. I know that the funding success rate was like 18%, but it was, everybody was applying for these grants. Everybody wanted these grants. But we wrote this grant, and to do this, we formed a coalition of 7 tribes, which eventually became the team, the Tribal Environmental Coalition for Monarchs. 7 tribes: Muscogee Creek Nation, Osage Nation, Eastern Shawnee Tribe, Miami Nation, Citizen Potawatomi Nation, Chickasaw Nation, and Seminole Nation. Brought together a coalition, and in partnership with them, applied for this pretty sizable grant, National Fish and Wildlife Monarch Butterfly Conservation Grant, to do this project, and we were chosen for funding, which was very cool. The only project in Oklahoma that was chosen, and it was one of the larger grants in the country chosen, and we were the only tribe or tribal group that applied, and we're the only, obviously, tribe or tribal group doing this kind of work. So anyway, it's been a lot of fun. So, and we, it's been an interesting process working with it, because each one of the tribes has approached this in a very, very different way. And actually, I'm not even a biologist. I was actually a political science major, and but I have been working with monarchs a long time, and growing milkweed and that kind of stuff. But for me, looking at this whole thing structurally, because I work much more heavily on the coordination and administration side of it, and we already have a scientist who knows all the scientific things, that would be duplicative to have me do that too. But, as somebody who's a citizen of the Muscogee Creek Nation and all that, being able to have those relationships, the tribes were already in place to be able to do that. But beyond that, to look how, for some of the tribes, this came out of, or it's placed in, or their partnership component is through the environmental department, which is how I thought they'd all do it, but it's not at all. So, like for Osage Nation, it comes out of their Communities of Excellence department, which is actually a public health thing, because Chief Standing Bear put forth a mandate that they needed to try and address the root underlying causes of chronic disease for Osage people. And so for them, they tried to address this as, heart, mind, body, and soul. And so they're creating an eco park, and to try and, everything from community gardens to get people outside, getting people reconnecting with the land, to get people exercising, coming together as communities. And so they're doing, as a part of that, they're doing pollinator habitat and monarch habitat restoration. So for them, it's about that. For Seminole Nation, it's out of the wildlife department, because they see it as a part of the wildlife. For Citizen Potawatomi Nation, it's coming out of the cultural preservation, tribal and cultural preservation department, because for them, restoring these lands back to the way they were is an important part of preserving sovereignty and preserving culture. Land, for many Native people, land and culture are really inseparable. So to restore the land back in health is how we preserve culture. Same with Chickasaw Nation, it's a multi-dimensional effort from a lot of departments, but it's ended up being mostly it's coming out of the horticultural department at the cultural center. So it's anyway, it's just been different with everybody. With Muscogee Creek Nation, it's one of these smaller chartered communities that has taken this on. And they're doing this because they believe in the land, they believe in the youth component, but they also they see this as a business opportunity, as a very eco-friendly business opportunity to learn how to raise these native plants and native milkweeds because there aren't enough available. So being able to do this, that develops a really great, business opportunity. They don't want to do gambling. They don't want to do the tobacco. They want to do other business opportunities in ways that make sense culturally. So anyway, it's been very different how everybody does it. But probably the most poignant reason, it was given actually by the Assistant Chief Lewis Johnson of Seminole Nation when we had our kickoff meeting. And, I had the different people from the coalition, because it was the first time everybody had been together, all the different tribes. And so I had everybody go around and talk about why they had chosen to participate. And Assistant Chief Johnson, who's this big, burly guy and, kind of a little intimidating, he got up there and he was talking. He said, well, we Seminole people were quite recently an endangered species ourselves. And now that the butterflies are in trouble, it's our turn to lend a hand and help them. So anyway, it's been a fascinating project, and just to see how, how this has brought people together. It has brought the tribes working together, and it's just been really interesting, and butterflies do that a lot for people. One of the things that I've noticed is that working on the Natives Raising Natives project, working on the Tribal Environmental Action for Monarchs, is butterflies are a great ambassador for our tribal nations. And there's a stereotype out there. So many people, they, if you're Native American, they think either these are people out living in teepees somewhere. We weren't even teepee people, okay? We lived anyway, but they put all of everybody in teepees. So either people in teepees, or they're a bunch of people who are just living large off gambling money, or they're just pushing tobacco at these tobacco shacks everywhere or something. And people have no idea that these are, they're big. Yes, they are, first of all, we're still here. Secondly, yes, these are groups that are working very hard to preserve culture and language, but they are also modern entities with complex tribal governments and constitutions, and, Supreme Courts, and, the Quapaw tribe, which is a relatively small tribe. I was just working with them this morning on something else. And, their environmental department is managing like a $30 million Superfund site, and up there in Tar Creek. And, so it's just people need to realize. And so for me, it's been a really wonderful thing to see the tribes really step up and take the lead on this issue in Oklahoma. It's been a really, it's been a really wonderful and very meaningful work. And last year we had, each one of our tribal partners planted 2,500 milkweed plants on their land, and we the big kickoff event was actually at the Citizen Potawatomi at their eagle sanctuary they have, which is very for the Potawatomi people. Eagles are very sacred because they take messages to the great Creator, and so at their eagle aviary, they any eagles that are hurt or anything, they take them in, and even if they're, can't be released back in the wild, they're treated as you would returning veterans, and they're able to live the rest of their life out there in peace and care. And so that's where the Citizen Potawatomi Nation chose to do their habitat restoration for the monarchs is there, because the butterflies are also very sacred for Potawatomi people. So we had our big kickoff event there last year, and the tribes came, we planted milkweeds, and anyway, it was very cool. But But this year, that was the first site where we actually found monarch eggs that were laid on the milkweeds that were planted last year.
Cool.
So it's really very exciting, and to see, success, or as Chip would say, proof of concept. But so it's anyway, it's been, it's not moving, and this year we're planting more over the fall and winter. We actually did a massive seed collection effort because a lot of these wildflowers to restore the grasslands here in Oklahoma, again, they're just not available.
And a seed bank, or
we have a seed bank now, but there sure wasn't one here before. So anyway, so we created a seed bank. We've got 125 species and representing 2 ecoregions because our tribes are split over 2 different ecoregions. And
how do you keep something like that? I mean, I don't have a clue.
It is complicated, and it's on a giant Excel database, and collecting it was hard, cleaning them was hard, and they get put by lot number into refrigerators, and we've been training people. The back to the capacity issue from earlier. Nobody had ever done this here before. And so it actually, when we kicked this thing off over a year ago, we brought people, it was like, I don't know, like 30 or 40 people, I don't know, altogether, up to Lawrence, Kansas, to the nursery that works with Monarch Watch, that grows out the milkweeds. Elliot Demler, it's Applied Ecological Services, I think. They raise hundreds and hundreds of thousands of native plants every year. They're very, very good at it. And so we came up there and we did an intensive 3-day training session with everybody about how to do this. And we've had ongoing training sessions, and everything's videotaped and photos, and and we're just trying to create a protocol for everybody to do this kind of work, whether you're tribal or not. But so anyway, ongoing training on all this stuff. But the seed thing was really, anyway, that was quite a thing to do that and clean that many seeds. But now every tribe got a hoop house. This is a slightly larger version here, but so they've got an unheated, like it's what is it? I guess probably 18 by 30 or something like that, maybe 18 by 36 hoop house. And those seeds, they cleaned them. They did cold moist stratification on them over the winter, and then they went in germination trays, and now they're being grown out in these little plugs. And so every tribe, hopefully at the end of the process, will have at least 4,000 of them, and of these native wildflowers. And then they'll be planting those back over on a 50-acre parcel in islands. And with those islands, as they become more well established, they can then be mowed, and then you have natural seed dispersal so that you eventually bring back those plants that have been extirpated from overgrazing. And there was a lot of grassland conversion after the Dust Bowl. Everything was put back to Bermuda and fescue instead of the native grass, which was a problem. I mean, it was good, but kind of bad if you're wildlife, because it doesn't support anything. So trying to bring back those grasslands to health and to the way they used to be. And those efforts don't just benefit the monarch, they benefit pretty much all the invertebrate life forms, benefit all the pollinators, certainly benefit all sorts of species of ground nesting birds. And so it's just trying to just restore that health back. Governor Anatubby, who's been the leader of the Chickasaw Nation for decades and is a really brilliant, great man, a few years back, he put a mandate to the Chickasaw employees that they needed to learn about soil health. Because thinking about it not only from an ancient cultural perspective about the life and everything down there, from a modern scientific perspective too, there's all sorts of things. As much is going on, actually way more is going on below the soil, below the surface than above it. And he thought it was just important for everybody to know that. So that was for everybody's individual educational plan. They had to do something with this. So, so that's the kind of thing this is about. Is for all people to start understanding those things, and for me thinking about for so many of the tribes that came out originally out of the Southeast. Originally, we were agrarian people, and getting sent up here to, these lands and these allotments, in Indian Territory after the removal, forced removal. A lot of this is rocky. I mean, it's rocky and sandstone and blackjacks, and yes, it's very beautiful. But for people that were using to living in lush agrarian lands, quite an adjustment. But to try and reconnect with both how the land used to be, with those agrarian traditions, but to do that in a 21st century way with modern scientific techniques, to use the most cutting edge scientific techniques as we try and restore these native plants. To me, that's just really nothing short of miraculous. And so I'm so grateful to be doing this and to be able to have this site, which is, our allotment and my grandmother's original land, to have that is a part of the process to reconnect all that, about those connections. It's really, it is, I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but it is profound, to me, to be able to have that. Ironically, one of the few places around here that never got plowed or converted, there's a native remnant prairie right here on this corner of the allotment. And what happened is, I've been told, is during the oil boom, there was like a lot of metal and equipment and stuff there, and so it was too dangerous to ever really go through later with a plow. So it's never touched. It's never its original native grassland. So we did a lot of seed collection there this year. But to think about, again, that was just viewed as being like so, like whatever, it was like useless and all that, maybe a little prairie hay, and to now realize the seeds that we're collecting from there could be the foundation of restoring a lot of grasslands here in Oklahoma. It's just interesting how those connections work.
Your great-great-grandma, your great-great, two greats.
Yes.
Grandmother would be thrilled.
Yes, very much so. And so it's really, really amazing to.
Is it vegetable seeds or mostly flower? Or when you say native plants, it's just anything and everything?
They are what the technical term would be forbs, but they're the wildflowers.
Wildflower, okay.
Yeah, and because those native prairie ecosystems, they have all sorts of all these really they're very beautiful. There's flowers and grasses, and for a lot of those, particularly for a lot of the grasses, the native prairie grasses, but some of the flowers too, they have root systems that go way, way deep. Some of it, like the big blue stem, they can go down 20 feet, which is why, during the Dust Bowl, the parts that blew away were the parts that had been plowed. The native prairie did not blow away. It was, because it was adapted. It was adapted for that. So we're trying to bring that back. And as you see more climate change, bringing back those native plants is the way to do it. Plus, for, when one of the first times Dr. Chip Taylor was down here, and we were just first trying to put together this tribal coalition and going down and meeting with different tribal leaders across the state. And he had not really ever spent any time in Oklahoma. And he's he's an insect ecologist. That's what he is, his academic background. Worked with bees for a lot of years, worked with monarch butterflies for a lot of years. And driving around, he would sit there and kind of like look out the window and sort of mutter from the other side of the car and say, if I was a butterfly, where would I find something to eat? And, finally, after about the 12th time, as I hear him kind of like muttering on the other side of the car, I started looking around, and all of a sudden I sort of got it. If you're in Oklahoma driving around, it's a sea of fescue and Bermuda. But if you're a monarch butterfly, if you're a native wild bee, where are you going to get something to eat? Because we've converted it all, and we're losing, even now, in this country, we lose between 1 and 2 million acres a year of monarch butterfly habitat to development. So, and drive around the Bixby area, I can tell you, I see it here. I mean, it's crazy. It's just everything. It'll be a beautiful like field with all sorts of habitat, and then you come by a month later, and it's been bulldozed to make room for another housing development. And people need to live somewhere. I understand that. I'm not opposed, but if we're going to do that, we really do have to create other spaces, because everybody notices when the monarch crashes. I mean, people are paying attention to that. In the winter of 2014, late in that fall of 2014, 2013, the winter of 2013, 2014, the monarch butterfly population had crashed to 33 million from the winter of 96, it was at 900 million. So we're talking huge catastrophic loss, and people pay attention to that and they notice that. But they're really the canary in the coal mine for what's happening for all sorts of pollinators, and people aren't paying attention because those other pollinators are disappearing just as quickly, but it's happening silently. And the real workhorses for pollination, those wild bees, they're going to. And as they disappear, these ecosystems are held together by these very, very, very complex, fragile, symbiotic relationships, these plant-pollinator mutualisms that have evolved over very, very, over thousands and, hundreds of thousands of years. And you start breaking links in that chain and it collapses. And as those things collapse, if they collapse, they really are gone. They're never ever coming back, those ecosystems. And I don't think that's something we want to see happen. So, I mean, the good news is it's not too late. We can still do things about that. But it's, we have to take more care, and we have to look out for, where are those butterflies and those bees going to get something to eat? And, we just, back when the ethanol mandate came through back in the mid-2000s, they, up north in the upper Midwest in particular, everything went nuts with planting corn because, right? And that was at the time the GMO crops, the Roundup Ready crops, were coming to fashion. And so you had all sorts of land that had never been put into corn production or soybean production before, because corn was over $10 a bushel. It was a record high. And so everything went into production up there. You had people plowing up fence rows. You had people plowing to the asphalt. You had 18 million acres come out of the Conservation Reserve Program and be put into agricultural production. I had a farmer up there tell me one time, I was working at a butterfly exhibit up in Brainerd, Minnesota, about when that was going on, how the county ag agents put so much pressure on people. I mean, it was almost like you were un-American if you were not taking that land out of the Conservation Reserve Program and putting it into production. And so now, of course, corn is not that high. Those lands, which were really nice habitat, and they got used in agricultural production, now they're not good habitat anymore, and they're not used for corn either. It's just a loss. And it'll take years before we can get them restored back to being good habitat. So we've had this huge, huge, huge loss of habitat. And somewhere along the way, if we're going to save that, fantastic monarch migration, if we're going to save these ecosystems, save these pollinators, we have to step up, because it begins with individuals doing this. And because just feeling bad about it, it's not enough. And so for me, working on, with this coalition, with the tribes, to see how people can do that, how people are putting their values into action and doing this. And we're actually able, through the grant funding, through bringing in Monarch Watch, give them the tools they need to do that. I mean, it's an amazing thing. And all along with this grant, and the coalition, yes, we're about restoring habitat, but just as importantly, it comes back to that capacity issue. Is how do we develop that so that all over Oklahoma, that we can, spread these, this word, how do we train the trainer so that these people, we're already seeing it happen. The Chickasaw Nation is doing so much outreach with people in that area. They grew, like 10,000 milkweeds that they gave away to people in the surrounding areas. They held educational events all the time at the Cultural Center down in Sulphur. Is we're seeing, the tribes are coming forth. And that was actually what I was talking to the Quapaws about this morning, is they want to supply caterpillar kits to the public school there to try on Earth Day, to try and raise awareness about trying to support pollinators. So the Miami Nation did a bunch of planting of milkweeds at the local school. So people trying to do this outreach and education, and it's the ripple effect and going outwards. So who knows where it's going to go? I'm not really sure where it goes next, but it'll just be interesting. It's bringing the past and the future together, and what happens next, nobody knows.
Well, when they want the caterpillars, where do they get them? Is that something that you supply?
Yeah, that's something we supply.
Part of
So that's what we do. So in between, when I'm not off trying to save the world one monarch at a time, or I'm not off publishing magazines. Actually, we really do still run the active butterfly farm, and we are running the natives racing natives program. Actually, we have a meeting tonight with our butterfly farmers, a training meeting, and getting supplies out to them. We're shipping out thousands of butterflies, in the last week to clients, all over everywhere. So we're very busy doing that too. So yeah.
Are those here, or do you have other buildings somewhere?
They are. Some of them are here. Truthfully, a lot of them are up at the house right now. Some of them are here. Some of them are actually probably in the hoop house right now. We do not have high-speed internet right now at this building, and so it's just so much easier to be up there and not back and forth. But so our house is just like covered.
Well, who's your largest customer? Not necessarily in person, but I mean, what's the?
Well, that's a good question. So people always ask that because if you say that you're a butterfly farmer, people think it's a made-up thing, but it is a real thing, and supposedly. Butterfly sales account for about $80 million a year to the U.S. economy. So I mean, it is a real business. So in the last week, we shipped a large order to the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation for a special event they had down at Hackberry Flats on last week. We're doing another shipment tomorrow. We're taking it over there for the Science Museum in Oklahoma City is doing a big event. So we're doing butterflies and caterpillar kits for them. We do a weekly shipment to the Desert Botanical Garden down in Phoenix. We supply butterflies for them. Who else? Because it's been very, very busy. We're going to be doing the one for Honor Heights. There's a butterfly house there. We do that. We are probably going to be doing the one in Branson. They contacted us recently. Also, St. Louis Zoo. I think we're going to be supplying them. Anyway, they're just butterfly houses and exhibits just all over everywhere regionally. And then, and also then a lot of the caterpillar kits for education for kits for schools. So that's a really big one. We do some releases too. Like we did a big one last year for Integris for a cancer survivors event. Oh, we also supply the hospice in Tulsa, Clare House Hospice too. So we supply them. They've been, this is the second year working with them. They get caterpillar kits every week, and then they have them in there for their clients and clients' families. It's like people come there. It's a nonprofit hospice group, so anybody can come there and live out their final days if they have less than 30 days life expectancy. And then they fully support the families. It's a beautiful facility. But so they've got a big caterpillar thing in the big central room, and then families can go release. So it's very meaningful for the patients. They see, transformation. And then the families can go release they've got a beautiful pollinator and butterfly garden outside. And so then the families can go release the butterflies after they've emerged. So we supply them too. Then I've got another one I'm supplying, I think in June. It's the big children's powwow with the 9 tribes up in the northeastern corner of the state. So I do a lot of work with the tribes, but a fair amount of the clients are from other things too. And then we supply our own exhibits too. So because Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and then the big one at Minnesota, those a lot of butterflies and a lot of caterpillar kits for that too. So
well, how do you ship them? I mean, how do you?
It's a good question. So if you see your container over there, is like the ones for the quapaw. They're packed in like with very careful packing material, and they're sent like that. If we're supplying live butterflies for people, which we do a lot of, then you chill them down, and butterflies naturally want to go into a state of dormancy, kind of what you think of like mild hibernation, when they get below about 30, ideally you chill them down to about 40 degrees. So and so when they do that, then they're actually put in little glassine envelopes, and it's gentle. Their wings, they just take them very gently and put them in there, and then you pack them up in an insulated container, and you have ice packs in there, not right on the butterflies, but so that they stay in their little state of dormancy, and they're shipped FedEx, and they go overnight, and they go to wherever they need to go. Yeah. So
so you have a freezer somewhere too, then?
So we've got freezers, we've got refrigerators, we've got insulated boxes. Yeah, we got
Things you don't think about. Yes.
You do not think about that. No, there's a lot of very specialized supplies that goes in with raising butterflies. Yeah.
And do individuals order them too?
They can. They can.
But most of it's bigger.
Theoretically, it's all bigger, but I actually met somebody at the Quick Trip at Bixby the other day who was a student teacher who wanted to do a thing, and she wanted to buy 2 butterflies. I gave her 2 extra for free. And she drove all the way from Oklahoma City because she was doing a lesson plan for these little kids about butterflies, and she wanted to have some of them to show them. So she drove all the way over here to buy 2 butterflies. And then we actually had another teacher just came over and buy like 10 butterflies, and that actually was just a couple of nights ago too. And again, drove from Oklahoma City to do it. I've had people who really, were on a very tight budget, again, come and buy like 2 or 3 butterflies to commemorate the loss of a loved one, and to release some graveside, and we do that too. So time is the problem for us, truthfully. We've got a lot going on, and but that's why do you do this? You do this, to help people. And
at any given time, how many loved ones might you have in your
thousands and thousands, tens of thousands?
And how do they find you to order from?
That's a good question because we don't advertise at all, but people hear about us. They just hear about us. So at the exhibits, we've got a lot of customers that go through the exhibits. So a lot of times people will track us down because they'll call the fair and they'll say, try and find us, and they'll get out our number. Or we are on the website for the International Butterfly Breeders Association, so you can find us that way. I do a lot of educational events, and I speak a lot of places, which you can probably tell by my canned speech and the fact that I've not yet once paused or shut up really in 30 minutes of talking. So I do a lot of educational events because I think it's important to get the word out there, and so people they know that what we're doing, so people find the website.
How do you decide how much to charge? I mean,
I don't. Oh, for the butterflies, or for
butterflies? Yeah.
There's a standard rate actually. There's
really?
This is it's a real thing because no, it is. It's a real thing. So we charge less than everybody else. I will tell you that. But butterflies are not free. Whoever said that was very misinformed because they are. During the high season, monarchs go for as much as $7 or $8 a piece for weddings. We're more like $3 on our stuff. But
when's high season?
Wedding season.
July.
Wedding season. That's when.
June.
Yeah. That's when everybody wants them. Or the off season, if people are looking for them, early spring before people really gotten the production up, then they go for a lot too. So. But they're it's they're a wonderful teaching tool, and people love them, and so.
Well, this may be a dumb question. Do they all look alike, or are there some variations?
There's total variation. And so the goal with butterfly farming is to raise very healthy butterflies, and so we want big, beautiful, healthy, disease-free, well-fed butterflies, and they look great. So. In terms of like the butterfly trade, there's all sorts of, the big ones that most people want to buy are monarchs or painted ladies, but we raise a lot of other species too, and so those primarily are purchased by butterfly houses and zoos and that kind of stuff for exhibits and that kind of stuff. But there's, everything's at a different price list, and I mean, they're different species of butterflies are different, working with them, even raising them. I mean, they do, individual butterflies have personalities. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I wondered that too.
No, it sounds crazy. No, they really do, actually. You can tell.
They come in different sizes too, the monarchs? Or mostly?
No, they're mostly pretty standard size. Yeah. So, pretty standard size, but.
And I understand the males have the dot on the lower.
Yeah.
I've learned that.
Okay,
That's
all right.
as much as I know.
Well, I think you know a lot more now. If you talk to Kristen, you probably know a lot now. So
when you transport them or mail them like that, do they pretty much all of them survive, or you might lose one or two
occasionally, but
Typically,
not normally.
not
You
normal.
know, if they're well fed when you do it, they're absolutely fine.
So what do you feed yours? Do you have a constant supply of milkweed?
Well,
Oh, no,
okay,
no.
those are for caterpillars.
Yeah,
So
that's
right, so
Yeah.
you know, and raising butterflies is all really about feeding caterpillars. You know, that's the trick is having the live plants on hand to feed them. Now, that caterpillar kit that I gave you and the ones that we sell to people, they're on an artificial diet, which is it's actually something you buy like from a commercial lab, and it's mixed with boiling water and anyway, but it's everything they need. Most butterflies cannot be easily, or caterpillars cannot be easily raised on an artificial diet. You actually have to raise them on live food of a specific kind. So, you know, in the case of monarchs, it's milkweed. So you have to have fresh milkweed for them all the time. For most people, they can't really do that if they're trying to raise out caterpillars. You know, they don't really have access to it. So that's why we do that with the caterpillars, with the painted ladies, and they're really easy to raise. But with the adult butterflies, there's like a nectar, a synthetic nectar that we make from a different formula. Or if we're out at an exhibit and we just want something easy to do, we'll actually give them a diluted Gatorade mix, which is all they need. And we let people like have a Q-tip and feed the butterflies, and they like that. So yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
It's not like hummingbirds have to have red.
No, it's not, but they do. I mean, we do usually feed them red Gatorade, so they are attracted. The colors do help attract them. So yeah.
Well, have other tribes? I mean, with the 7, were there others interested in that or not interested, or?
That is a good question. There are other ones that are interested, but we just limited it to 7 to start out. We are probably going to be expanding that. We're actually looking at. We're in the process of creating a larger organization called Tribal Alliance for Pollinators, TAP, and the team in the TAP. And with the TAP, all of those, you know, boots on the ground lessons that we've learned through the this very labor intensive process, we're going to be able to make that information available to a lot more tribes actually throughout North America, trying to do this to support trying to support monarchs, support pollinators. So we've had interest from tribes in southern Canada, and just a lot of different places. So we're going to be expanding this in Oklahoma. Hopefully, if some funding comes through the way that we've applied for another grant, and if that comes through, we'll be adding 3 tribes to our coalition. So we'll bring that up to 10 for 2018 and 2019, and then hopefully, we're just continuing to look for more funding to bring on and make these available, because there's a need for this, and we know how to fulfill it. So,
well, is it primarily the middle of the state? Well, we're a little bit to the east, though.
It's the entire state. I've had interest from probably at least half the tribes in the state, maybe more, are wanting to do this. So we'll figure out how.
More milkweed.
More milkweed. Yeah, they need milkweed, and those fall blooming plants are really important too.
I'm assuming milkweed comes back every year. You don't have to plant it.
It's
perennial.
Yeah.
Just once you started it.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
And it just blooms once a year, or does it bloom?
If you cut it mid-year, it after the monarchs have already come through, it will bloom a second time slot. Sometimes it, so where they've got burns, then it'll come back and that kind of stuff. But yeah, typically it blooms once a year. But it's very the bloom lasts a really long time. And one of the interesting things about the most common variety of milkweed here in Oklahoma is green antelope horn, or Asclepias viridis, and it is actually a terrific. Not only is it really beautiful when it blooms, it looks exotic. It's really beautiful, but it stays blooming for a really long time, which is important out there because it's really drought resistant. And so for those other pollinators, even other species of butterflies, bees, all sorts of all manner of pollinators, when you're out there, you can see they are working that viridis like crazy. And Kristen told me one time, Dr. Kristen Baum, that at the Stillwater Research Range, where they do these controlled burns, when the milkweed comes back, it is preferred by even bees to any other blooming thing out there. When it's out there, is they prefer it over anything else. So it's an excellent support plant for all sorts of wildlife.
It's the nectar, but then the leaves are what the caterpillar.
Exactly, monarch caterpillars eat. The only thing they can eat, milkweed. So.
fascinating, isn't
Yeah, well, it is fascinating. I love it. I got the best job in the world, so which is good because I do nothing but work. So it's a good thing I like it.
And your interest goes back to your husband.
It was started out.
Initial. Yeah.
It is. He was definitely the one who's got us in the butterfly business. I always loved being outside. I loved animals, all that kind of stuff. But I never had any particular special interest in butterflies until him. And but now, that's our job. It's what we do.
Well, like in elementary school, that would have been in Tulsa.
Yes, Patrick Henry.
Do you remember monarchs coming through, or paying attention?
I do, and actually, I remember this one time when I was about 10 or 12 or something like that. At our old house on 43rd Street, I remember the monarchs coming through, and in the fall. And it was like almost like, it was, I don't know, now that I know more about monarchs, it was thousands of them. It was like a cloud. I mean, it was just unbelievable to see it go over the house. And the thing is, people, you don't really see that. And it's funny because I'm out there so much talking about monarchs to people. And I've heard that from a lot of people my age and particularly older, is that, I remember seeing them migrate through when I was a kid. I used to see them everywhere. And people tell me that a lot. And then the next thing they always say is, and I don't see that anymore. Mm-hmm. I do remember that. I never ever forgot it because it was just so incredible to see that. I hope someday to see it again.
So you graduated from high school in Tulsa too?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did.
What year would that have been?
82.
And then you went
up to college up in Minnesota.
To major in political science.
Uh-huh.
And that's what your degree is in?
Uh-huh.
But then you ended up in journalism?
Actually, business side of publishing, actually. So
I'm just trying to put the pieces.
I know. It makes no sense, basically. I was a typical liberal arts major. That's me. I was very liberal artsy, and going to a little tiny liberal arts school, and then I needed a job after I got done, and I had no money, and so I was living up in St. Paul. So anyway, they had an opening for a circulation assistant at a magazine publishing company. And, I love to read, so I thought I'd probably like working in a magazine. So I did. And anyway, I just really loved it. And I've actually been, I worked like in quick succession. I switched jobs like 2 years in a row or something like that. But then in 89, I started at the company where I still am now today. So, and interestingly, most of my colleagues, my core group of colleagues there, have all been there about the same length of time. So it's nice anyway.
Was Breckinridge your married name or maiden name?
It's my maiden name.
Maiden name.
Yeah.
And your mother's side was Native American?
Yes.
What about your dad?
They're here, Tulsa people.
Or not Native American?
No, not Native American. No.
Hence the blue eyes, maybe.
Yeah, but Euchees actually typically have gray eyes.
Cool.
And so and that's like really common that they have. They're typically light-eyed people, and so that's. And my grandmother used to say that to me, that because my eyes are actually, they look blue today because I'm wearing a blue shirt, but they're typically they're kind of a weird color. And they pick up whatever. She always said that's what happens. You mix up Creek and Euchee blood, you get those strange colored eyes. So, because my grandmother, her dad was Euchee, and my great grandmother, her mother was Creek, Muscogee Creek, and her father was Euchee. So we're both.
Do you remember them speaking the native language?
My grandmother did not. My great grandmother did, and my mother remembers it a lot. Her, speaking stuff. My grandmother's older sister spoke some Creek, and always used to love to show that off, and always. But anyway, but I've studied it. I don't take the classes, but I've tried to study not Euchee because that's really hard. But we work with the Euchee Language Project a lot that are trying to save the Euchee language. But Muscogee language, one summer we were driving up to a show in Edmonton, Alberta from here, and I was driving with my daughter, and so we had the 8 CD language set from the Muscogee Creek language division of the tribe, and so the whole way up there and back we had to study. I made her study Creek language. So, but we do it. There's an iPhone app for it too, So if I ever question, I always look it up, and but maintaining that language, it's so important, so important. And I was actually interviewing a young woman, actually just in this office, just last week. I'm probably going to be hiring, who's a student over at the tribal college of Muscogee Nation. And I was asking her how her classes were good. And she said, oh, her finals coming up. And she said, oh, they're all going to be pretty good. But man, the Creek language one is going to kick my butt, But that's all the students who do that, who are at the tribal college. They take, language classes too. So it's important.
Well, for the Euchee, how many acres does the tribe have?
See, this is the thing. It's Euchee's.
Not many, probably.
No, is there's the allotments, but we don't have any. We actually formally, because we went back in the 50s and tried to get federal recognition as an independent tribe. It was denied, and then lately people have been trying to do it. So technically, we're just considered a part of the Creek Nation. So we don't have our own tribal governance anymore. Right now, I believe we only have 4 native speakers left who learned the language as children. So somebody that is just wonderful that we work with sometimes is Dr. Richard Grounds of the Euchee Language Project, and he is trying to save the language. He believes in breath-to-breath transference of culture, and so it's an immersion program. So these youth, it's over in Sapulpa, these the kids come, and they come after school every day, and they come on the week. At summers they spend all day, and they actually spend time with the elders to learn the language, and it's an immersion program to actually learn it. And they actually have other kids in Sapulpa who want to come learn it now too. And somebody told me, it was a Euchee woman who told me this, that for a while the football team in Sapulpa, they were using Euchee to call plays because other people couldn't understand it, and they had a bunch of kids that were speaking language because they're in the program. So
I like the code.
Yeah, like the code talkers, right? So so they're but yeah, it's a very hard language. The interesting thing about the Euchee language and why it's so important to preserve it is what is called a linguistic isolate. It is not like any other language on the planet. It is truly it. A lot of the other languages, the Iroquoian or different things. It's not Algonquin. It's not Iroquoian. It is literally unlike any other language on the planet, and it is endangered. So they're trying so hard to save it.
Well, those 4 that do, how old are they? I mean, old.
They're very old, but they're getting some younger people now that are fluent, but they just weren't original native speakers. Okay. So to save that before it's too late. So they're working hard on it.
Well, did your grandparents have traditions that they passed down to you?
And that's a good question. People ask that. We did it in a much more casual way, and so I think the cultural values were there. But my mother did more of that when she was a girl and was taken to that. My grandmother, she was very business oriented, frankly, and that's what she wanted to do. And so she never, I don't think she left that behind. She certainly, was proud of who she was and always wanted an awareness of that. But she was very focused on other things, My cousins, my, grandmother's older sister, much more, they actually, those cousins were raised with more of those ways, than I was. But it's, those cultural traditions, we honor them, and I think in some ways as people are just getting more awareness and, people are, less discrimination and more awareness that it's entering a new phase. I mean, it's even like what happened at Standing Rock and all that. It's people are taking more pride now. Or I think it's just, I don't think that's wrong to say they're taking more pride, because I think people always took pride. But I think it's being accepted more, out there in the mainstream. So
different is okay.
Different is okay. And so anyway, I think it's a good thing. Yeah.
Butterflies, so too. When you were growing up, with that symbolism, was there any symbolism within the tribe?
Not
Not really.
Not really. You know, I have heard that that some people, that my brother told me one time that he met a Creek elder who said that he thought that what people call the eagle dance is really about butterflies, monarch butterflies. But no, you know, not for us. No.
Well, you see a lot. I'll change into flowers. The Indian blanket.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yeah.
that? I'm assuming that's a native.
Yes, it is a
plant
native plant. Yep, it
to
is.
Oklahoma at
Yeah,
least.
it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that some of the seeds that you're?
You know, not that it's actually that is not one that's on our list. But
Probably plentiful enough.
they're plentiful enough. But you know, the list anyway. We started out with a list of 92 species that we were supposed to be finding. This is from the scientific list created by Chip Taylor, and okay, we're by this, but we actually ended up with 125 species that we collected. So
And some very rare ones.
some that were fairly rare, and you know, in which case, you know, you just take a few of the seeds. You don't want to disturb them, but yeah, we did find some that were pretty rare, and excited, you know, because now that we plant these, now we're going to have a seed source, a dedicated seed source to continue to bring those out, and you know, these little patches, as the big swaths of habitat disappear, these little patches get more and more important because as butterflies have to fly so far in between these patches to find, you know, a place to lay their eggs or a place to nectar, they're using a lot of energy to fly. And so the more of those patches that we can have, particularly in the absence of large swaths of habitat, the more likely we are to be able to get them to survive.
Well, a median on the highway is not necessarily the best spot either with fatalities.
You know, but you know, and that's something that people have talked about that, and there's actually been some scientific papers in that. With the thing, because they're trying to do more plantings along the highway, and people are worried, you know, about the planting. What the scientific equation comes back at is that because that is one of the largest things of public land that is maintained, is that you're going to see net gains by planting there. Because people are like, those are going to run up there. But you know, if that's the only place that we can plant habitat where it's going to be maintained, then they're going to be far better off there than not at all.
Oh, that's true too.
Yeah, so that's the theory.
They just have to learn to mow it.
Yeah.
The best times. Or
Yes,
whatever.
and that has been controversial trying to get them to do that. But actually, there's the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. They're making a lot of strides that way. So they're getting much more sensitive to that issue. Because I know, you know, in years past, you'd see this great stand of milkweed, and then you'd go, and then it's like gone. But they're getting better though.
Yeah, and I've done some other interviews where they've talked about goat heads. Is that a term?
Are those burrs?
Yeah. Do they have flowers? I mean, is that something that would be in your
No.
seed pool?
No.
Because they're disappearing too.
Yes, they are.
So we're told.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Along with jackrabbits.
Yes. Yep.
So maybe this.
Well, I know, and see, it's all of it. It's
And prairie chickens.
yeah, you know, again, we've lost so much habitat, and you know, with so many of these species in trouble, yeah, there's a lot of things, and drought certainly doesn't help, and you know, and chemicals and all that, but it really comes down to it's just loss of habitat. So,
Or are you aware of other people that have still have their 160-acre?
more than you'd think. I do, you know, and it's funny because I remember when I first moved back here, and my mother was at like a Oklahoma Historical Society thing, and they were talking about there weren't any allotments left or something, and she went up afterwards and talked to me. He's like, oh my, he was like, really? Because he's like, we thought they were all gone. But since then, because I spend a lot of times, you know, working with the tribes, there's actually quite a few of the allotments left.
Still in the same family? But
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it is good. It is good. I think we're probably one of the last few in Tulsa County. I don't think there's very many left here, but certainly you get in other parts of the state, and people have them. And some of the tribes, quite a few of the tribes, are very actively buying back land. They're buying back the old allotments. They're buying other large parcels of land for sale, and they're trying to establish their land base again. So that's interesting too.
Well, when your grandparents and great-grandparents had it, besides oil, what else did they farm?
Cotton, and there was an orchard, and they raised animals. My grandmother raised soybeans for a while in that front pasture. All sorts of different things. Yeah, but it was farmland.
Wow.
Pecans. We still raise pecans here too.
I noticed them coming into town.
Yeah.
That's
So
pretty to see.
it is very pretty. So we raise pecans, hay, run cattle, and all that kind of stuff. So typical Oklahoma agriculture stuff.
Any buffalo wallers left?
No, not here. That would be cool. But the Seneca Cayuga, they have bison up there. And anyway, I remember having a long conversation with them one time, and they were saying how they'd get out all the time, and they'd have to go on Highway 10 and try and catch them and bring them back in and stuff. And anyway, so but a lot of different tribes are getting back into raising those again too.
And does the land go to the river?
We
close to the river.
we are, the Arkansas River's just down, across that way, but Snake Creek is over that way. So we do not touch, because we're on the other side of 129. So we don't touch that one, and we don't touch that one either. So we're close. But back before statehood and everything, is they used to. My great grandfather used to have a store actually down there, and Leonard and farm all that, and that was down by the river and stuff too. So
I wondered why they picked was it by drawing, or were they selected that they wanted?
He selected this for her. He actually selected this for her. So and we've got the original application where he signed it, and everybody listed and what parcels and all that kind of stuff. So
it seems pretty flat to farm.
It is. This was good. Yeah, this was good farmland. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's why they wanted it. So I don't know if everybody ought to select their piece, or if he just did. I don't know the answer. It's a good question on it.
And when they would take their items to market, would it be Bixby, or would it be Leonard or Tulsa?
So he had a store there, but Bixby would be. They had like a cotton gin there, and so and the railroad was through there, so there was a lot of business there, and so different days.
Different days, and I didn't know the story about shotgun.
Yeah, no, that's a true story. Riding shotgun, yeah. So, but to be able to connect with that history like that,
Well, moving forward, like what you see, like the next year or the next 5 years for your butterfly farm.
Well, we received a USDA grant, which took some big snags and some detours. But hopefully later this year, we're going to be opening a visitor center here. We're going to expand our capacity to raise the native plants. We'll have an educational center here for the farmers to train them. We'll have a butterfly house that people can walk through. And so the farmers in our program, the butterflies that they raise, some will be sold to clients. A bunch of them will be sold then here to this permanent exhibit. And then the program will be self-supporting long-term. But long-term, the goal is really to have this, to be able to provide that information about, how do we support habitat, educating people about what, Native people are doing to support habitat, and, also give people just a chance a place to buy that stuff. All the time, I'll be out doing educational stuff, and people will say, okay, great, I'd like to plant a milkweed in my garden. Where can I buy some? And, and so there's like one place, Grog's, that carries them sometimes. But I want to be able to help people with that, I'll encourage people to plant natives in their garden because they're better for supporting pollinators. And people are like, great, where do I go buy them? And, they're not here. Up in Minnesota where I lived before, there's half a dozen fantastic large native plant nurseries that are busy all the time. But it's not here yet.
Well, how many farmers do you have in your program?
So we have a long waiting list right now because we had the thing with the grant funds getting tied up. We've got 20 that are really actively engaged in it. I've got another waiting list of like 100 people that I need to get going with. But for right now, we're focusing with this group, and then we'll move forward after that.
And when you say build a butterfly house, you mean on this property or somewhere?
Yeah. So this lab will stay here, and then there'll be a barn, and then a big educational center, visitor center. Which anyway, hopefully.
Have you been to Mexico where they winter?
I have not. People always ask me. I'm supposed to go in January of this year. Actually, there's our butterfly breeders group is putting together a trip to go there, and I'm hoping to be able to go because I have never been and I would love to go.
It'd be cool to see them.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, do you tag them, or is that just Dr. Bombs?
I don't do it. A lot of people do it. It's very cool to do it though, and
See how far they go.
see how far they go. And again, once we have things expanded and here and up and running, I would like to have a fall tagging event so that people can come out here and do it and learn more and register their butterflies and and see how far they go and all that. And there's just so much I want to do, and we just need we need to expand our facilities because we're just not set up to
I'm
accommodate
curious
people.
as to how they know their directions.
No, it's an excellent question, and that's part of what makes the monarch migration so special. Because when they are going back, obviously those are their great grandparents that left 6 months earlier, so they are flying, and they're flying as far away as southern Canada. And, you're talking something that weighs no more than a postage stamp. These things are flying almost 3,000 miles in some cases. And the overwintering grounds itself, it's spread out over a range, but the totality of overwintering, it's less than 10 acres a lot of years, and it's above 10,000 feet in elevation. It's the Transvolcanic Mountain Range. It's hard to find, it's obscure location, and so you've got these butterflies, fragile little butterflies, flying up to 3,000 miles, and they are going to an obscure location. It is very, very tiny, and they've never been there before. And just think about that. It's another reason when I try and tell people why it's important to do this, not only do we need to save ecosystems collapsing from pollinators disappearing, but the monarch migration truly it's one of the greatest, natural miracles on Earth. And it's not, they still don't really know how they do it. I mean, they know some of it has to do with magnetic and, an angle of the sun and all that kind of stuff. But really, taking a step back, it's an impossible task. I mean, it is, and yet they do it year after year after year. And so it is. It's nothing short of miraculous.
And an Oklahoma wind is what I'm thinking.
And the Oklahoma wind, and think about that.
Off course,
I know, and and that whole thing. They have to be able to keep, and Chip is studying that a lot. There's like some new iPhone app where you're tracking how they're bearing, compared to the wind heading and all that kind of stuff. They're just trying to get more data to understand this better. So.
And that's a whole different piece of this puzzle.
It is a whole different piece of the puzzle, and it's fascinating, and and the science behind it. It's really fascinating.
Well, of the ones that you raised, their lifespans were
not very long during the active breeding season. During the fall, the wild ones go into what's called reproductive diapause when they start the migration, and once they stop reproducing and stop mating, then they will overwinter. Then they'll live long enough to overwinter, and actually the first generation comes back here. So certain times of the year they can live up to 8 months, but most of the time they're just a month or something.
And they have a certain amount of eggs they lay.
Yes, about 200 or 300. Yeah, a female can lay. So.
And that's all at one or over one period of time, or
that is like. Yes, towards the end they start getting kind of tattered and worn down, but yeah, and so ideally, if there are adequate milkweed supplies, she'll lay one per plant. Oh. So to make sure, because that they have enough to.
So you need a lot of milkweed.
Mm-hmm. They some great scientific minds got together and crunched the numbers about what it's going to take to save the monarch migration. 1.6 billion new stems of milkweed in the ground.
And you guys have gotten.
And we planted. Well, we're
10,000 maybe.
More than that. So because by the end of this year, each tribe will have planted 5,000 milkweeds and 4,000 of the fall blooming forbs. So we'll have 35 plus. There's a lot of extra ones. We kind of did some other stuff, and then the Chickasaws just did a bunch. So through this project, we'll have planted 40, probably close to 50,000 milkweeds. So
making a dent.
It's making a dent, but those plants that we put in this year, the monarchs came in really hard and fast, and they could not find enough. I mean, there was plants were getting used like crazy, and I wish we'd had more out there, because we were seeing a lot of plants were having like 2 or 3 eggs on them. Well, they shouldn't have been doing that, so we actually really do need more milkweed here.
Have they already come through for this?
There's a few still around. because they were kind of late leaving Mexico, some of them. But for the big migration, the big push is already through, and then we won't see them again until right around late September, and they'll come back through again. It's always fun to see them come back through.
Yeah, geography, and you've got geography, math.
Geography, math.
Science, science.
Meteorology. That's why it's such a great teaching tool. It's there's just nothing like them, and the kids get so excited about it.
So time for you to get your PhD.
That's my mother jokes all the time. I am getting my PhD. She's like, you realize you're just the world's oldest graduate student. She tells me that all the time. My graduate work. So I would actually, I'd love to go do that. I just don't have time. I'm too busy with other things. But it's really fun. It's it's an interesting thing what I'm doing now, because I work with academics a fair amount of the time. But then I'm working with, environmental staff out at the tribes. I'm working with just the general public. I'm just working with all different sorts of people.
You can see the difference that you're making. I think that's.
I feel like it. I feel really good. This is the best job I've ever had in my life. It really is. Nice people, really nice people that I'm working with too. So
do you collect butterfly things? Not real butterfly. Butterfly knick-knacks.
No, and that's a funny thing. We don't. And now this is going to be immortalized. But people give us those things all the time, and it's like, oh well, it's kind of that's our work, and we're relaxing. We don't want to necessarily do that. But anyway, no, we don't collect. Actually, we don't even really collect anything. We don't shop. Honestly, it's very sad. But just all I do is work, and I'm very fortunate because my husband works with me, because otherwise, and my mother helps me out too. Otherwise, I would never see anybody, because that's all I do.
Oh, that's what we should ask too. Take me through a typical day for you.
There is no such thing as a typical day. Honestly, there really isn't. That's kind of interesting thing about it. I'm on the road a lot. It depends. I do thousands of miles a year out in the site visits with going out there to help people, plants and milkweed and, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm out there all the time meeting with my different tribal partners. So I'm on the road a lot. Then I spend just an awful lot of time at the computer, truthfully. Anyway, doing stuff.
How much time in the hoop house?
Not that much. It's really my husband's area. Thank goodness he's actually he's really the pro on all things butterfly and plants. That's his thing. I wish I'm in there with a camera taking pictures of it, trying to document it so that we can use it for a training manual. And and so I do a lot of that. That's more what I do. I write grants. I fulfill grants. I administer grants. I do all of that stuff. I'm the person who does all that kind of back end stuff. But he's the person who's really the front end of and so knowledgeable working with butterflies and the plants. He loves growing stuff. He loves raising butterflies. Nothing makes him happier than to do that. So.
Well, is there a particular reason it's called a hoop house versus a greenhouse?
Because it's not heated. Because it's just it's not heated. It's like a kind of like a low budget greenhouse, really, but it doesn't have all those extensive mechanical controls and temperature control and all that. It is a special design that we did just for this project. So it's got a vent at the top, and so you can use the natural air convection, and then shut that up at night, and then try and maintain the temperature at night. So.
And there's 7. There's 7 of those around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And you're putting it in for another. It's going forward. This grant's not just stopping. You'll do it.
It is. Right now. It's in its second year. We have funding through the end of this year. We've applied for a renewal, and hopefully it will get renewed. We also have applied for several other grants. We applied for like a National Geographic grant. We're doing another like USDA grant to support this. We're just actively always looking for more funding sources to bring in because we want this to go on. We want it to be a permanent thing, and so. Anyway, that's what I spend a lot of my time, working on chasing funding. So, I love being in the hoop house. I love being with the plants. I do help out with the butterflies and the plants as needed always, but I've got to be out there doing it.
And who takes them to the post office?
He does. My husband does that. Yeah, he does that. He takes them to the post office. He ships all the stuff. He packs everything. He's way better at all that stuff than I am.
Good partners.
Yeah, no, he's a great partner, and anyway, so we're just really fortunate.
Well, is his background education similar to yours? Nothing to do.
We met in college. Yeah, he's an economics major from McAllister College. He does. Yeah, so Yeah, but no, neither one of us
But
are
not
actually
green
about.
thumbs or agriculture or horticulture?
No, he did raise Christmas trees though from the time he was, yeah. So he actually did have an agricultural vocation. So, but yeah, no, he's just always loved growing stuff. And so, anyway, it works out.
It works out. We've covered a lot. Is there anything that I haven't asked that I need to ask?
I don't think so.
That I don't know to ask?
No, I don't think so.
I usually end with having people tell me how they want to be remembered. When history's written about you, what do you want it to say?
Gosh, I've never thought of that before.
Besides calling you the Monarch lady, I guess.
No, I would not even get that. It's just, I guess this is just like so cliche, but hopefully I made the world a little bit of a better place before I left. As I hope that at a minimum I didn't make it any worse, but I helped to some people to get their lands healthier again, and just that brought them with the butterflies. It's a big, scary, complicated world, but hopefully those people, whether they came to an exhibit and saw the butterflies, or they had a caterpillar kit, or they were out there helping plant milkweed, hopefully, for one moment it made their lives a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Oklahomans are happy that you came back to Oklahoma.
Well, I certainly am happy about it.
Well, I appreciate you talking to me. Thank you.
Well, thank you.